You lean in, your eyes close, your lips touch someone else's, and for a moment, neither of you needs to say anything at all. It feels instinctive, automatic, like your body already knew the choreography before your mind caught up. But what if it didn't? For decades, researchers believed kissing was something humans invented relatively late, somewhere in ancient South Asia, then carried slowly outward across the world like a rumor passed from one culture to the next. A newer discovery just rewrote that timeline, and it starts of all places with clay. In 2023, two researchers, Troels Pank Arbel from the University of Copenhagen and Sophie Lund Rasmussen from the University of Oxford, were studying something far older than romance. They were reading cuneiform, the world's earliest writing system, pressed with a wedge-shaped stylus into wet clay tablets thousands of years ago by the people of ancient Mesopotamia, the region now covered by Iraq and Syria. Buried among contracts, prayers, and medical texts, they found kissing, described matter-of-factly, as if it needed no explanation at all. The tablets dated back roughly 4,500 years. That pushed the earliest written record of kissing back by more than 1,000 years earlier than scholars had previously assumed. Before this discovery, the leading theory belonged to Vaughn Bryant, an anthropologist at Texas A&M University. Bryant had spent years tracing kissing's origin to ancient Vedic Sanskrit texts from South Asia, written around 3,500 years ago. His theory suggested romantic kissing spread outward from there, carried west through later trade and conquest into the Mediterranean world. The Mesopotamian tablets complicate that story. If kissing was already an ordinary documented act in Iraq 1,000 years before those Sanskrit texts existed, then it probably wasn't invented once, in one place, and exported like a trend. So where does that leave us? Maybe further back than writing can take us at all. Long before anyone pressed a stylus into clay, our primate relatives were already doing something that looks a lot like a kiss. Jane Goodall, observing wild chimpanzees for decades, documented mouth-to-mouth touching used as a greeting and a gesture of reassurance, not unlike how you might hug a friend after bad news. Bonobos, an even closer genetic cousin to humans, do something closer still to a romantic kiss, lips and tongues included, as part of how they manage tension and strengthen bonds within the group. That timeline stretches kissing's roots back not thousands of years, but millions. One leading theory ties it to something even more basic than affection: feeding. Mothers across many primate species, including early hominins, the broader family tree that includes humans and our extinct ancestors, chewed food and passed it mouth to mouth into their infants. It's a behavior still observed in some human cultures today. The mechanics of that act, lips pressed together, mouths touching, may have laid the groundwork for a gesture that later got repurposed for something else entirely. Survival first, romance second. So let's reconstruct a moment. Picture an early hominin mother, somewhere in the deep past, pressing softened food from her own mouth into her child's. The child relaxes. The contact itself becomes soothing, separate from the food. Across countless small repetitions like this one, generation after generation, mouths touching starts to mean something on its own. Comfort, closeness, safety. That association doesn't disappear once the feeding stops. It just gets carried forward, reused, reshaped into something new. There's even physical evidence that this kind of mouth-to-mouth contact reached further back than our own species. In 2017, a research team led by Laura Wyrick, then at the University of Adelaide, analyzed ancient dental plaque scraped from the teeth of Neanderthal remains found at El Cedron Cave in northern Spain. Inside that hardened plaque, fossilized for roughly 50,000 years, they found microorganisms genetically matched to oral bacteria still living in modern human mouths today. That kind of microbial match doesn't happen by accident. It suggests saliva was being exchanged between Neanderthals, and possibly between Neanderthals and the early humans they encountered. Whether that exchange happened through shared food, shared water, or something closer to a kiss, the conclusion is the same. Long before anyone called it kissing, mouths were already touching, swapping the invisible biology of the people behind them. There's a chemical reason it might have stuck around. Robin Dunbar, an evolutionary psychologist at Oxford, has researched how close mouth-to-mouth contact triggers a measurable release of oxytocin, the hormone tied to bonding and trust. His work, alongside fellow researcher Raphael Wlodarski, suggests kissing also lets people gather information they couldn't get any other way: taste, breath, scent, subtle biological signals about a potential partner's compatibility, all collected at a distance too close for anything to be faked. In other words, a kiss might double as a kind of biological background check, quiet, wordless, running underneath the romance the entire time. Here's where the story gets stranger. In 2022, A team of researchers, including Christiana Scheib at the University of Cambridge, traced the genetic history of herpes simplex virus 1, the virus responsible for cold sores. By analyzing ancient DNA pulled from skeletal remains, they found something unexpected. The virus's most common modern strain appears to have spread rapidly across human populations starting around the Bronze Age, the era when humans first began crafting tools and weapons from bronze, roughly 5,000 years ago. Their theory? A rise in mouth-to-mouth contact, kissing, may have helped to drive that spread. A virus, in other words, may be one of the clearest fingerprints we have of when kissing became widespread human behavior. Not a poem. Not a love letter carved in stone. A pathogen, quietly riding along for the journey. Romantic, isn't it? But here's the twist that should genuinely surprise you. Despite how universal kissing feels, it isn't actually universal at all. In 2015, anthropologist William Jankowiak led a cross-cultural study published in the journal American Anthropologist, examining 168 cultures around the world. He found that romantic sexual kissing existed as a known, accepted practice in less than half of them. In many traditional societies, from parts of sub-Saharan Africa to indigenous communities in the Amazon, lip-to-lip kissing was rare, absent, or sometimes regarded as unhygienic and strange. Some cultures developed entirely different ways of expressing the same closeness, like the nose-to-nose pressing and inhaling, sometimes called a kunik among Inuit communities, conveying the same intimacy without lips ever touching. Even ancient Rome, often imagined as endlessly romantic, treated kissing with surprising precision. Romans used 3 separate words depending on context: osculum for a friendly kiss on the cheek, basium for a kiss between lovers, and savium for something far more passionate. The Romans, it turns out, understood something we rarely think to articulate. Not all kisses are doing the same job. So the gesture that feels like it must be hardwired into every human being on Earth turns out to be something else. A cultural inheritance, practiced widely but not universally, learned more than purely instinctive, which means the thing you do without thinking, the thing that feels as natural as your own heartbeat, might actually be closer to a custom you absorbed than a reflex written into your DNA. Think about that the next time you lean in. You probably learned it the same way you learned language, by watching, by imitating, by growing up inside a culture that taught you, without ever sitting you down to explain it, that this is what closeness looks like. Somewhere between a mother feeding her infant hundreds of thousands of years ago and a 4,500-year-old clay tablet describing the same gesture in Mesopotamia, kissing stopped being about survival and started being about connection. The mechanics never really changed. Only the meaning did. Now think about how you do it today. A first kiss after a date arranged through an app. 2 strangers who met as profiles before they ever met as faces. Some people will even tell you that kiss is the real test, the moment that decides whether weeks of messaging turns into something more. Maybe that instinct is older than either of you realizes. Maybe you're still running the same quiet background check your ancestors were running 50,000 years ago, just with better lighting and a restaurant in the background instead of a cave. The gesture is the same one a Mesopotamian scribe once thought ordinary enough to write down without comment. The same one a Neanderthal mother might have shared with her child beside a fire in northern Spain. The context around it is the only thing that ever really changed. So you lean in again, your eyes close, your lips meet someone else's, and for a moment neither of you needs to say anything at all. Only now you know the truth. This isn't some hardwired instinct as old as your heartbeat. It's something stranger, older, and far more human than that. It's a story, told mouth to mouth, passed down for far longer than anyone ever managed to write down.